The claw marks were massive jagged gouges ripped into the bark of the tree, far too large for any animal I'd ever seen. My hands trembled as I traced the edges, the deep grooves sending a chill through me. Whatever made these was powerful, dangerous. As I pulled out my camera to document it, a deep guttural howl echoed through the forest, making the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. And then, from somewhere far too close, I heard something moving. My name's Maddie Miller, and I was 31 years old when this incident happened to me. I'm a freelance journalist, and on October 31st, 2016, I was desperate for a story that would put my name back on the map. You might remember me from that city council scandal I broke the year before. Yeah, that was me. But in the world of journalism, you're only as good as your last byline, and mine was starting to gather dust. So there I was, pulling up to the Ozark Mountains trailhead in my beat-up Jeep, armed with nothing but a backpack full of gear and a whole lot of determination. The crisp autumn air nipped at my face as I stepped out, leaves crunching under my boots. The scent of damp earth and decaying foliage filled my nostrils, and for a moment, I felt like I was breathing in the very essence of the wilderness. You know that feeling when you're about to do something big? That mix of excitement and terror that makes your heart race and your palms sweat? That's what was coursing through my veins as I stood there, staring into the dense forest. I remember thinking to myself about how they say the mountains hold secrets, some deadly. Little did I know how prophetic those thoughts would turn out to be. I checked my backpack one last time. Camera, notebook, flashlight, water, and enough granola bars to last me through a small apocalypse. Everything a truth seeker needs, right? I chuckled to myself, thinking about how my mom always said I was too nosy for my own good. If only she could see me in the woods chasing after rumors of some creature called the Ozark Howler. But hey, that's what journalists do. We chase the truth, no matter where it leads us. As I started down the narrow trail, the silence of the forest struck me. It was eerie, like the whole world was holding its breath. Where were the birds? The squirrels? Hell, I would have welcomed the buzz of a mosquito at that point. But there was nothing, just the sound of my own footsteps and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. I pulled out my notebook and started jotting down observations. Cool breeze, trees bare, smell of damp earth. It was almost meditative, you know? It was just me, the forest, and my thoughts. I found myself thinking about the upcoming election, wondering how it might change things. Would it affect my career? The stories I could chase? I shook off the thoughts. I was there for a reason, and I couldn't let politics distract me. 2 hours into my hike, that's when I saw it. The thing that made my heart skip a beat and my journalistic instincts go into overdrive. Massive claw marks, scarring the bark of a nearby tree. I'm talking huge, folks. Way too big for a bear, too deep for a mountain lion. My hands were shaking as I snapped photo after photo, my mind racing with possibilities. Could this be it? The evidence I needed to revive my career? I ran my fingers over the gouges in the wood, feeling the rough edges. Whatever made these marks was powerful, and big. Really big. For a moment, doubt crept in. What was I doing out there alone, chasing after some creature that could do this kind of damage? But I pushed those thoughts aside. I was Maddie Miller, damn it, the journalist who wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty for a story. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor, that's when I heard it. A sound that still haunts my dreams to this day. It was a howl, but not like any animal I'd ever heard before. It was deep, guttural, almost otherworldly. It echoed through the mountains, making it impossible to tell where it was coming from. I froze, my body electric with a mix of fear and anticipation. My finger instinctively went to my camera's shutter button, ready to capture whatever might appear. But there was nothing. Just that bone-chilling cry hanging in the air. As the sound faded, I realized something else. My GPS had lost signal. My phone? Dead zone. Suddenly, the forest felt a whole lot bigger and a whole lot more threatening. I was alone out there, truly alone, with whatever had made that sound. A flutter of panic rose in my chest, but I pushed it down. I'd faced down corrupt politicians and angry mobs. I could handle this, right? But as another howl echoed through the trees, closer this time, I couldn't help but wonder, what had I gotten myself into? And more importantly, how was I going to get myself out? You know that moment in horror movies when the protagonist decides to investigate the creepy noise instead of running away? Yeah, I always thought those people were idiots. But there I was, doing exactly that. Funny how your perspective changes when you're the one in the story, huh? As dusk settled over the Ozarks, I found myself pushing deeper into the forest. The trail had become less defined, more treacherous. Each step was a gamble. Would my foot find solid ground, or would I stumble? The beam of my flashlight cut through the gathering darkness, but it felt pathetically inadequate against the vast, oppressive black of the forest night. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Have you ever felt eyes on you, even when you're sure you're alone? It was like that, but 100 times worse. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig sent my heart racing. I kept thinking about those claw marks I'd seen earlier. Whatever made them was out there, somewhere in the darkness. That's when I stumbled upon it. A cave entrance, hidden behind a curtain of vines. Now, any sane person would have turned tail and run. But me? I saw a potential Pulitzer. I mean, what if this was the lair of the creature I was hunting? So, like the world's dumbest explorer, I decided to take a peek inside. The smell hit me first. It was a horrific mix of wet fur, rotting meat, and something else. Something I couldn't quite place, but it made my stomach churn. I swept my flashlight across the cave floor, and that's when I saw them. Bones. Lots of them. Some looked disturbingly human. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my camera steady as I snapped photo after photo. This was it, the evidence I needed. But as the thrill of discovery faded, a cold, hard realization set in. I was standing in a predator's den, and I had no idea where that predator was. Just then, my flashlight flickered. Once, twice. Then darkness. Complete, absolute darkness. Have you ever been in pitch black before? It's not just the absence of light. It's like the darkness is a living thing, pressing in on you from all sides. I fumbled in my backpack for spare batteries, my fingers clumsy with fear. That's when I heard it. A low, rumbling growl from somewhere in the cave. It wasn't the same as the howl I'd heard earlier. This was closer. Much closer. I bolted. I didn't care about the story anymore. I didn't care about my career. All I cared about was getting out of that cave alive. I ran blindly, my hands outstretched, scraping against rough stone walls. Behind me, I could hear heavy footfalls and ragged breathing that wasn't my own. As I burst out of the cave, the cool night air hit my face like a slap. But I didn't stop running. I crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping my face, roots threatening to trip me with every step. The thing, whatever it was right behind me. I could feel its presence and hear its snarls. In that moment, my mind flashed to the weirdest things. I thought about the upcoming election, about how I'd skipped watching the latest episode of Stranger Things to come on this stupid expedition. I thought about my mom and how I'd promised to call her more often. Would I ever get the chance now? My lungs were burning, my legs screaming for rest, but the creature's hot breath on my heels kept me moving. I darted between trees, using my camera flash to disorient the beast whenever it got too close. Each flash gave me a split-second glimpse of my pursuer. A hulking shape, twisted horns, glowing eyes that seemed to burn with malevolence. Just when I thought I couldn't run another step, I saw it. A ravine looming ahead. Too wide to jump, too deep to cross. The Ozark Howler's growls grew closer. I was trapped. With no other choice, I began to scramble down the steep slope. Rocks cut into my hands as I half climbed, half slid down. A howl of frustration echoed from above. The creature couldn't follow. I hit the bottom hard, the impact knocking the wind out of me. As I lay there, gasping for breath, my body shaking with exhaustion and leftover adrenaline, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. What if this thing was smarter than your average predator? What if it was patient? I huddled in that ravine, straining my ears for any sound of pursuit. The howler's cries echoed overhead, sometimes fading, sometimes frighteningly close. Was it circling, looking for a way down? Or was it just toying with me? As the hours crawled by, my mind raced. What if I couldn't find my way back? What if the creature was waiting for me? And even if I did make it out, who would believe me? I clutched my camera like a lifeline. I remember desperately hoping that I had caught something, anything, to prove what I saw. Because without proof, I was just another crazy person with a wild story. And in the world of journalism, that's a death sentence. So there I sat, in the cold and the dark, waiting for dawn and wondering, how do you escape from a nightmare when you're wide awake? You ever notice how time seems to stretch when you're terrified? Those hours in the ravine felt like an eternity. Every snapping twig and every rustle of leaves had me on edge. I kept thinking about all those true crime podcasts I'd listened to. How many times had I heard the phrase, "and they were never seen again"? Was that going to be me? As the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, I made a decision. I couldn't stay in this ravine forever. I had to move. Maybe the creature had given up. Maybe it had found easier prey. I almost laughed at that thought. Since when had I become prey? I began to climb, my muscles screaming in protest. Every movement was agony. My hands were raw from the rocks, my clothes torn and muddy. I must have looked like something out of The Walking Dead. And I felt like it too. As I reached the top of the ravine, the forest was eerily quiet. No birds, no insects. Just an oppressive silence that seemed to press in from all sides. I took a tentative step forward, then another. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure it could be heard for miles. That's when I saw it. Just a glimpse, really. A massive shape moving between the trees. My breath caught in my throat. It was still here. Still hunting. Still hungry. I ran. Again. But this time was different. This time, I knew what I was running from. And let me tell you, knowing makes it so much worse. The creature crashed through the underbrush behind me. I could hear its labored breathing and smell its rank odor. It was closer than ever before. I pushed myself harder, ignoring the burning in my lungs and the ache in my legs. Suddenly, my foot caught on a root. I went down hard, the impact knocking the wind out of me. As I lay there, gasping for air, I heard it. The slow, deliberate footsteps of the Ozark Howler approaching. I rolled over, fumbling for my camera. If this was it, if this was how Maddie Miller went out, I was going to get the shot of a lifetime. Even if it was the last thing I ever did. The creature emerged from the shadows. It was like a bear, but wrong. Twisted horns curled from its head, and its eyes. God, its eyes. They glowed with an otherworldly light, full of hunger, and something that looked unsettlingly like intelligence. Time seemed to slow. I raised my camera, my finger on the shutter button. The howler tensed, ready to pounce. This was it. The moment of truth. The story of a lifetime. And then, click flash. The creature recoiled, momentarily blinded. In that split second, I scrambled to my feet and ran like I've never run before. I don't know where I found the strength. Adrenaline is a hell of a thing, I guess. I burst out of the tree line, the morning sun nearly blinding me. There, like a mirage, was my beat-up Jeep. I threw myself inside, fumbling with the keys, The engine roared to life just as a bone-chilling howl echoed from the forest. I peeled out of there, gravel flying. In my rearview mirror, I caught one last glimpse of a massive shape at the edge of the trees. And then, nothing. Just the open road and the rising sun. You'd think that would be the end of the story, right? Girl escapes monster, lives happily ever after. But real life isn't that simple. I got back to town, disheveled and frantic, but no one believed me. They looked at me like I was crazy. The diner waitress eyed my mud-caked clothes and asked if I was okay, concern evident in her voice. I ignored her, frantically scrolling through my camera. My heart sank. The photos were blurred, indistinct shapes in the darkness. I had no proof, nothing to show for my terrifying ordeal except some scratches and a story no one would believe. In the weeks that followed, my reputation took a nosedive. Editors refused to publish my account, citing lack of evidence. My peers mocked my cryptid story. With each rejection and each snide comment, my determination grew. I knew what I saw. I'd prove it no matter the cost. That was years ago now. My apartment walls are covered in maps of the Ozarks, blurry photos and notes. My phone rarely rings with job offers anymore. But I don't care, because I know the truth. The Ozark Howler is out there, waiting, watching. And someday I'll be ready. I'll return. I'll get my proof. As I sit here, staring out at the mountains visible from my window, a chill runs down my spine. Because sometimes, on quiet nights like this, I swear I can hear a familiar howl echoing across the distance. And I can't help but wonder, are there more of them out there? And more importantly, how many other secrets are hiding in the dark corners of our world, just waiting to be discovered? So let me ask you this. The next time you're alone in the woods and you hear a strange noise, will you run? Or will you, like me, be foolish enough to go looking for the truth? Because trust me, once you've seen what's out there, you'll never look at the world the same way again.